Sorry I'm late.
I was just going to say, I want to make sure to have an opportunity to introduce our last panelist. Do you want to just share your name, what you studied when you were in school, and a little bit about kind of the career path that you've had since graduation, and then we'll kind of go back into the conversation.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean that ran late. But my name is Cielo. I graduated from the U of M in 2005 with a sociology major and minor in business management. And then after I graduated, I worked at Target Corporation downtown Minneapolis for 4 years as a merchandise specialist. So I worked a lot with the buyers, and in that role, we were in charge of making sure that when you go to your Target stores, all of the items that you wanted were there on time. So I was there for 4 years, and I left in May. And then now I graduated from Town, which is a nonprofit, and doing work with the small business on University Avenue, and I'm helping them with some of the business management and marketing strategies. So,
Welcome.
thank you.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question related to the experience piece. Would you all be willing to touch on the types of experiences that you gained as a student, just generally, and then how did you balance that with other responsibilities, with academics and everything else that you have going on? Because I think that's a common concern that we hear from students is there may be a lot of responsibilities in addition to academics, and how do you fit that experience in? Any tips or thoughts on that, or what experiences you've had?
Well, okay, I'll start. I was really fortunate. I had a lot of experiences as undergrad. Starting my freshman year, I actually researched, I believe in late July, August, because I knew I wanted a part-time job. And so I had already researched, I got interviewed and got hired on at the ophthalmology clinic as a visual field tech there my freshman year. So I was going to school and then starting into school and starting a part-time job. I didn't work very many hours. I worked maybe about 10 hours a week because I wanted just to figure out how I'm going to manage studying and going to class and then working. And then after I think the freshman year was always the hardest, I think, because you really have to figure out how you're going to manage your time, how much you're going to spend doing this and that and that. And so I think freshman year was just kind of we'll see what happens kind of a deal. And then after I figured out, how I was going to manage my time, starting my sophomore year, I started working some more hours, working in different places. I worked at the dentistry clinic as well. And then I started volunteering at different places and interning. I started interning at Northwest Youth and Family Services, worked with at-risk youth, worked at Guild Incorporated, interned there as volunteer service assistant, and then starting junior year, I had a full load. I think junior was probably my toughest year, but it was the year that I had the best grades. I ended up getting almost straight A's my junior year because I was so busy. Because I knew that, because my style was, when I knew that I only had a small amount of time to study, I took that time to study. I didn't have a lot of free time. So I knew that the busier I was, the more focused I'm going to be. And that is kind of how I was, and that's how that's why I got myself so busy, because I needed to, get experience. So I did some research. So I was a research assistant at the dental clinic with one of the fellows there. He was doing his thesis or dissertation, so I did that for a little bit. Worked at different other nonprofits because I knew I was going to go to social work too eventually. So I wanted to work with a lot of, families and youth. And then I, joined HMSA, was on board as well. So that was a lot of fun. I know most of you and some of you are actually on board too. And yeah, so just worked a lot, interned a lot, volunteered a lot, and I think to me, I got a lot out of it. And when I graduated, I actually got hired before I finished school, and it was because I had that experience. I know you were talking a little bit about that too, because in my major, part of our senior project is creating a portfolio. And so in my portfolio, we had, our resume, our transcripts, our awards, where we worked or interned and volunteered. And mine was a complete, a big portfolio. And when I went to my first interview, I was I showed them what I did. So not only did I verbally say it, it was visually there. And then I got hired, and I didn't have a lot of in between undergrad and my professional life, but it really definitely paid off in the end, and it was really stressful. It was stressful, I'm not gonna lie. But I think I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it too. So you just have to be very purposeful in what you want to do in your life. Be purposeful with where you want to intern, where you want to volunteer. Just don't volunteer there because you think you need those hours. Like you have so much, like this is a big city, it's a good location to find those places. So really being purposeful with like what kind of skills you want to gain, and researching those opportunities. And you have the career services here to help you find those opportunities. So really utilize that, utilize them because they're the experts, and it's free. So that's really nice. Well, you pay the student fees, but you need to pay the fees.
What about some,
Ideal.
what about some of the others? What kinds of experiences did you have, and how did you juggle and squeeze those in?
I think what Sarah said, I'm kind of like her, is that the busier you are, the more you use your time more wisely. Because if you don't have a job, if you just go to school, you're like, let me go with my friends, play some video games, go out, hang out, and then tomorrow I'll do it. And then that really impacts the quality of your work because you keep pushing it back. So I am kind of like Sarah. When my sophomore and junior year, I had 3 jobs, three different part-time jobs. I worked here at school, and then I had a YMCA internship that I did, and I worked at Best Buy Corporation as well, and I went to school full-time. And all of the experience really enhanced my resume, but with that, you really had to do a good job at managing your time. And I know being home and also being a home woman, living at home, I had some responsibility with the families, and luckily my parents were more understanding than other parents were, so they knew that I had school to take care of and everything, but aside from that, they still expect me to be home at a certain time and do chores and help cook for the family. So added all that on, I think growing up as a home daughter, because you have those responsibilities, especially in my family, I think it made me more responsible. And from a very young age, even in high school, I worked throughout my high school years, and you learn how to manage your time. So going back to the question is, if you want to have internship and work and go to school full time and have time for HMSA and other things, activities, you really have to manage your time wisely, and that goes beyond school even, because in a professional life, you have a full-time job, but there's other things you want to do on the side. And if you want to be successful at that, you really have to learn how to manage your time wisely. And if you don't know how, I know that you have a lot of resources, classes available, and or you might know a friend of yours who is involved with everything. You're like, how do you do that? Maybe talk with that person, is really learn those skills from them, and have them have you shadow them, mentor you how to really manage your time wisely. Because that's what I do. For me, luckily, I started young in high school, so in college I was able to manage all that. But if that's not something you're used to, it's gonna be hard to try to really manage your time wisely and try to do well in school while doing all these other things. So that would be my advice. Get in touch with U of M services. I know there's a couple classes, because when I used to go to undergrad here, there was a class that I took about time management, so that helped a lot. But also pay attention to who you know, and sit down with them and just talk with them and have them mentor you, because that's going to help you throughout your life, your professional life as well. So.
And as for me, I think I did tons of odd jobs my undergrad year, and and I'll be completely honest with you, I always found time during my day to take a nap, to get enough just kind of to relax and to socialize, but definitely and I am not a morning person, so definitely and I was able to schedule my classes later in the day. And so, and I was totally fine with having night classes, so I would work during the day and have classes at night. That wasn't a big deal for me. And so, and I think that really helped, because it kind of opened my days for, my internships and my part-time jobs, but volunteering, and and being in student groups and stuff, and meeting with my class team, my classmates and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was just that's how I balance myself, and and I'm total night owl, so I would sleep in later, but I never I always found time to study, even if it's really late, I know I had to get it done, I would study, and if I had an hour between classes or work, that's when I'll study and stuff. But really it's you just I found really good positions where I could sit at work and do my homework, and that was kind of the big thing too. Is I was a peer mentor my sophomore year, worked with freshmen, college students, and while I'm just in the office and working with them, I'm also doing my homework, looking for like other internships and other volunteers. What else? And then and like during the day, and I know during like the weekdays it always gets really hectic, and I volunteer on the weekends. And and I don't drive, so like I rely on public transportation, and like a 15-minute drive on the bus is like an hour and 30 minutes. So and I was and that was fine with me. So I mean, I never like tried to volunteer during the day during the weekdays because I was so busy. So I pushed volunteering on the weekends, and I just like sacrificed like 5 hours of my weekend to volunteer and to kind of get that experience, to fit into my like current lifestyle and stuff like that.
I think in retrospect to the Hmong woman, it was really hard for me to transition from high school to college. My oldest brother, he was just working, so he never had his weekends off. And the middle son went off to get his master's degree in a different state. So I was the only son left in my household, and I was sort of torn. Half my family were Christians, half my family were shaman. So every weekend I'd have to go and help this side of the family out or help this side of the family out, which is really difficult because you're trying to fit in your academics, and at the same time you're trying to gain the respect of your family. And it's really, really difficult. So one year I just had to give it all up. All the weekends I'm saying I have to focus on my school. If I didn't, I would have just dropped out. My first year here in the fall, my grandfather passed away. So it was a really hard time for me to try to just even adjust as a freshman. And they expect you to be there to help with the sacrifices or whatever. And it was one of the toughest times in my life, just trying to transition my first year. But learning how to manage that and understanding that you really have to focus on yourself too, not really what other people want you to do. That's like you're building the foundation for yourself. So save some time, definitely save some time for yourself, no matter where you are in your life, whether it be wanting to socialize a little bit or just being able to be a part of an organization like HMSA. I was able to really gain a lot of friendship and gain a lot of connections through HMSA. The older generation HMSA, they're already graduates, and even like the younger generation HMSA, or just individuals that you meet on campus, you're learning a lot from them, and they're learning a lot from you. So it's that give and take. So save some time for yourself. It's very, very imperative.